For centuries, we've thought of consciousness as this deep philosophical mystery, right? Maybe even a spiritual one. But what if we've been coming at it from the wrong angle entirely? What if consciousness isn't about poetry, but about math? What if it's just a formula? That's exactly what we're going to dive into today. We're looking at this really bold, pretty unusual document that tries to do just that, to define our very being with a formal binary system. It really makes you wonder, and this is what we're going to explore. Can you actually write a line of code for the human soul? Okay, so let's get into it. Let's start decoding this thing. The source material we're looking at, it's not just some philosophical paper. It's more like a blueprint. It approaches consciousness not as some big mystery we should just think about, but as a system, something that can be reverse engineered. And we're not just talking abstract philosophy here. The goal of this document is to build a super rigorous, almost mathematical framework for it all. The big idea is that at the most fundamental level, reality itself and how we experience it boils down to simple binary principles, like ones and zeros. So before we can get to the real engine of this whole thing, we've got to learn the language, right? We need to get on the same page with the definitions. And it starts with the big one, the one we're all here for, consciousness itself. Okay, I know this looks dense. It looks like a textbook. So let's just translate it into plain English. Occurrent, that just means it's happening right now. It's an active process, not a static thing. Contaminable, that just means it can be influenced by stuff. Think about how a song totally changes your mood, or a conversation shifts your whole perspective. And this next part is absolutely crucial. It's limited. Our consciousness is kind of like a flashlight in a huge dark room. We can only see what's in the beam, right? We can't see the whole room at once, and we definitely can't step outside of ourselves to see the person holding the flashlight. Now, to really get a handle on this, sometimes it helps to look at the opposite. So what's non-consciousness in this system? Well, it's not just being asleep or knocked out. It's the complete absence of the process. No interaction, nothing occurring, totally unobservable. The original uses a great analogy. If consciousness is a ripple in a pond, non-consciousness isn't just still water. It's the pond not even being there. All right, so we have our definitions, but what's the engine that makes it all go? Well, the paper calls it the simulation axiom. And you really got to pay attention here because this is the absolute heart of the entire theory. It basically breaks down into 3 steps. Step 1, the idea of seeing the whole picture of reality? Forget it. The paper says it's fundamentally unobservable, impossible. Step 2, because of that, all we can ever actually perceive is the difference between one moment and the next. That's it. And then step 3, and this is the real mind bender, our consciousness isn't just the thing that notices the change. Our consciousness is the change. And this whole concept, this entire axiom, gets boiled down to this one single, really elegant equation. Let's walk through it. See? That's easy. That's consciousness. That 3-line symbol means is identical to or is defined as. That triangle, that's delta. It's the classic symbol for change or difference. And ST and ST plus 1, that's just a fancy way of saying the state of things at one moment and the state of things at the very next moment. So, put it all together, and what does it say? It says your consciousness is the difference between what just happened and what's happening right now. You're not the person watching the movie of your life. You are the flicker between the frames. Okay, so any good system has its rules, right? But the really interesting stuff, that's what happens at the edges, at the limits. So what happens when this engine of reality starts to sputter, or even breaks down completely? Well, think about it. If consciousness is change, what happens if change just stops? The theory has a name for this, pseudo-escape. You can also think of it as a simulation collapse. It's when the very process that defines existence gets suspended. The formal symbol for this is this upside-down T thing. It stands for what the paper calls the formal non-proceedability of occurrence. That's a mouthful, I know. It's just a very, very technical way of saying the process has hit a brick wall. That's it. The system has halted, the engine of change has seized up, game over. This all leads to another really profound consequence, which the paper calls its very own incompleteness theorem. And if that sounds familiar, it's because it's a nod to Gödel's famous theorem in mathematics, the one that basically proved some things can be true but can never be proven from inside the system. Well, this is the same idea, but for consciousness. It says that any conscious system you could possibly observe is, by its very nature, incomplete. You can never see the whole picture from the inside. So what are the implications of this? What does this incompleteness actually mean for us? Well, for one, it means reality is always generating new variants, new possibilities. It's never static. It also means that a total observer, some godlike being watching the whole show from the outside, is impossible. Why? Because the very act of observing is part of the system. You can't be outside of it. And finally, it means that your consciousness, it's never a finished product. It's an endless, constantly unfolding process. Okay, so if everything is always changing and always incomplete, you have to ask, where is this all going? Is there a point to it? Well, the theory actually proposes a kind of grand, ultimate destination for the entire universe. The paper calls this idea pseudo-unification, and the suggestion here is pretty wild. It's that all the different, seemingly separate simulations happening in reality, every mind, every physical process, everything, are all slowly, gradually tending toward a single, unified state, a state of what it calls maximum binary coherence, basically perfect harmony. And this is the cosmic punchline, the big twist. This state of perfect unity can never actually be reached. It's what mathematicians call an asymptote. It's a destination that the universe is always getting closer to forever, but it will never actually get there. And why not? Because if it did, if everything became one, all difference would vanish, change would stop. And according to the system's own rules, if change stops, consciousness itself just winks out of existence. And that leaves us with one final, really deep question to chew on. This whole system, this entire formula, it describes consciousness as the perception of difference, the change from one moment to the next. But it never actually says what those underlying moments are. It never defines the stuff that's changing. So if we are the change, what exactly is changing?